Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. It's a Thursday afternoon, and I've got to say, JP, I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to be talking to you about football, about anything else that might come up, maybe even getting back into a couple of wee conversations that aren't all about everything else that's happening in the background. But we do need to start with that. I hope you've had a good week. I know you've been really, really busy. But last night, there was a coming together of fan groups. Everybody knows how this escalated. And, if we go back to the open letter initially, JP, which, the signatories just continued to come in to the point where it was pretty clear that we had, that was the original statement. We had 7 questions for the Celtic Board, 7 questions they should be able to answer. 7 questions that, they should already have nailed, if you like, JP, and no answers were forthcoming. What followed from the original open letter was the statement on Saturday night, which you've not had a chance to talk about. I'm sure you've got feelings and views on that. And all that did, actually, I think, is it gave more strength to the open letter, and more people were adding their groups, their affiliations, their associations, their channels onto this open letter. We've had a lot of people actually in the comment section and on the social media. Sorry if I've not got back to everybody individually. I will get round to it. A lot of people saying, what about fans who are not affiliated to any group, CSC, etc.? Absolutely, it was discussed. We discussed it as a group before going into the meeting last night. We're looking for a way around that so that everybody can be represented, even if you're not affiliated to any group. So what then happened was it just grew and grew. And from there was dialogue within the group, not with the club. The club still haven't answered any of the questions. And a decision was made to set up this meeting at very short notice. Last night, Wednesday night at Gracie's. Big shout out to the staff at Gracie's. Staff came out on their nights off, JP, to help us out, to sort out the tech, that kind of thing. Place was at a capacity in the room. There was also the big screen on the wall with everybody who couldn't make it dialing in. And I've got to say straight off the bat, and it's not a process of, blowing smoke up everybody's backsides. Really well pulled together, really well presented by the group. And it was open. It was all about dialogue, sharing ideas, disagreeing, and coming together as a group. And it was all about unity and having a collective and a movement where we are going to be able to, I think, enact positive change at the football club. So I want to thank everybody, first of all, for coming along. Some people I'd never met before, some people who you think you know, JP, because you see them on screen or you maybe follow each other on the socials. So thanks, every single one of you. Every voice was heard. That anyone, a lot of people don't like to put their head above the parapet. They're just there to observe, and that's fine as well.
What do you mean, like people on YouTube with avatars and false names, eh?
Yeah, well, to be fair, there might have been a couple of them and you wouldn't know. I'll get back to YouTube. I discovered something last night as I got home. I was trying to kind of unwind from quite a busy day. I found my new favourite Celtic channel, and I'm going to come back to that as well because you got a shout out on it. So the meeting went really, really well as could be expected. There was a bit of the rebel soul in the room because not the viewer represented. Save our Celts. Jim Orr, he was in the room. There was a bit of that old school OG rebel spirit in the room as well. And we need a bit of that. I think we kind of stand on the precipice of change, JP. And I think that a lot of fans are looking at moments where this could have happened in the past and maybe should have happened in the past, but it didn't. And it's no one's to blame. But it has happened now. And the fans have all come together. Everyone was left at the door, whatever. I more than happily agreed to facilitate it and get in about the crowd. There's maybe people in the audience who think Acsom's rubbish, who don't like me, whatever it is. That was all left at the door. Everybody was working together, no ego. Everything was great. So there's now outcomes, and I want to talk about that. Before I dive into the outcomes, JP, a brief overview of your own thoughts about how this escalated from the open letter to last night's meeting.
Well, my first knowledge of the letter, the statement on Saturday night, was a cursory opening of Twitter, as I do every now and then, just to see if anything's happened. I certainly wasn't expecting that, but the first person I saw that had shared it, and probably within minutes, was Michael Sheridan. Shout out to Shez, cousin of Paul of the Wakes. So I know Michael through my friend Mikey, and Yeah, he shared the statement. I'm not going to say exactly what he said, but it was expletive ridden. And I thought, if he's written that, absolute, and then there was a couple other words. If he's written that, then what on earth am I about to read when I clicked the statement and opened it? And my first thoughts when I opened it was that you could tell straight away that it was lengthy. Like I didn't read it start straight away. I just flicked the thing and saw it went on for ages, and I was like, right, this is either going to be good and it's going to be a kind of bearing of the soul from these people, or it's going to be the opposite of that. And it was obviously the opposite of that, and you could tell within, I don't know, first 2 or 3 lines that it was going to be what it was. But then it continued to just almost unravel and be like, how on earth is this what they think is going to placate anybody that has signed that letter and demand the answers to the questions that were put out last week? I mean, there's absolutely no way that's happening. Obviously, when you dig into the detail of it and it gets picked apart, and then as Yogi did with his AI thing yesterday, where he kind of gave his own version of it, that it just shows you how easy it can be done. Now, we don't know for a fact. I mean, maybe somebody has debunked it as being Chat GPT or something like that. I'm not overly familiar with with that particular tool. I haven't used it. It's not something that I'm afraid of, but like I prefer to write my own thoughts in my own words because.
And by the way, you do it very well, JP. I've said this to you before. I want to read your book. I mean, I've seen some of the stuff you write about music, and I would much rather that. I get more of a human feel from reading my favourite authors, for example. I think AI is a good tool. It's a tool. It's not something you use at the foremost. You don't allow it to write a state. You might allow it to check for grammar, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think that's maybe where I would maybe, if ever was writing something, that I would maybe call upon it. But yeah, I think what does not come across when you're using something like that is emotion, and there is no emotion in that statement. There's no empathy. There's no understanding. There's no acknowledgement. It's just it genuinely is just, as many other people have said, we know what we're doing. You know, F you, get back in your box. Be happy with what you've had and what you're getting. And I just think that when you see the support galvanated, see what I did there?
That word, honestly, I think it should enter the lexicon.
By the way, that patter is. Well, I watched one of the videos that was posted. I think it was Celtic fan content, Ronnie67 or something. He puts up just sort of clips of Celtic-related stuff on YouTube, and he put up the 10-minute clip of mainly you talking with Kelly Cates and Chris Sutton and your man Rory from the BBC. And when you read the comments, most of the comments were like, well said, well spoken, blah, 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 and all the rest of it. And then the galvanated comments started to appear. And it was the ones where people were kind of really having a go at you for like dropping a word that anybody could have done. And then I was glad to see people kind of going, well, to be fair, he was speaking live on radio and as you said as well, you'd been speaking all day.
Yeah.
in various other platforms, whether it was here or Sky Sports or whatever. And I just thought, I'm not having that. I could have got involved in a war of attrition with people on the comments, but I couldn't be bothered. But I just thought that just sums up social media, doesn't it? When like guy speaks well for Celtic or about Celtic on a mainstream platform, eloquently gets points across, definitely gets positive comments from Celtic fans, and then it's like galvanated isn't a word, laughing emoji, and you're like, really? You're going to focus on one word that he said?
See the thing, I know it's not a word, right? And the other week there, I actually spoke about Chris Ayer, and I know he plays. I know where he plays his football. I know he plays for Brentford, but I don't know if it was because we had spoken about Ryan Christie, but I spoke about him playing for Bournemouth, and I know he doesn't play. And at the time,
call yourself a Celtic fan. You don't even know where an ex-player plays.
But it's out your mouth. And I didn't realise I'd said Galvin, and I'm pretty sure Chris Sutton will raise that the next time we're on a live stage somewhere, he will wind me up about it because he's a very intelligent guy. And I know galvanised. That's a Chemical Brothers song. I know the word. It slipped out, right? And at least I never swore. Anyway, no, you're right.
Back to the letter, but it has galvanised the Celtic support, because who would have thought that you could do that? You know, who would have thought that you could get people to leave preconceived ideas about people at the door, like last night or whatever, because ultimately everybody wants what's best for Celtic, and currently that isn't the case. We aren't getting what's best for Celtic. And I was watching the clip with Jim White. I mean, even people in the media who don't like us, and let's face it, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
They are all kind of going, well, they've got a point. Like that transfer window was a mess. They didn't sign players before the Champions League fixture, which was a crucial Champions League fixture. They have not replaced players. It's now becoming so blindingly obvious to even the most bitter, you know, Alex Ray on Clyde last night. You know, I don't like the guy, but he was kind of going, well, look, they've got a point. You know, the transfer window was a mess. They didn't prepare well. And then you think about Jim White going, Kairat Almaty of Kazakhstan. And then you hear him saying those words and you're like, we got put out of... It's honestly absolutely ridiculous. And then your man Jordan's going, oh, they should have had enough. They should have had enough to beat them over the two legs. It's like both those games finished 0-0. What did Brendan Rodgers say? He needed strengthened, the area strengthened in the pitch for the whole summer. We need the forward area strengthened. And then you actually dig into it and go, right, well, Kyogo wasn't replaced. Kuhn was sold. And then you think to yourself, right, what if Balikwisha picks a ball out of the sky onto his right foot, switches it to his left foot, beats three men and paps into the top corner on Sunday? You're like, that's exactly what we needed in that game. Exactly what we needed in that game. We were well scouted in that respect with that player. Why wasn't he brought in before that game? And then you score one, you score 2, 3, 4 against that team, because they have to come out, and it's just like another run-of-the-mill Scottish League game. All they did was, with all the determination in their lives, they fought for their lives for those two games. But we've seen it so many times before. We saw it in the first game of the season, St Mirren. We were 0-0 at home at St Mirren, and it took us to the 80-odd minute to get that goal. We get that goal earlier in the game against St Mirren. They come out, we end up 2, 3, 4, and that is like essentially what would have probably happened. Add to that, you're playing Ida at the start of the first leg when there's probably already talks going on about him leaving the club. So his head's not really there, and he's probably admitted that in the interviews where he's like, I was all over the place. Maeda starts in both games, and then the same thing's going on with him. Yang, also the same thing. So you've got
Maeda misses 2 1-on-1s over the 2 legs.
Yeah, and you've got, so you can say what you like about, oh, they should have had enough, but when you actually analyse each individual player in those forward areas, psyche in those games, then they weren't on it. They weren't tuned in. You know, they didn't have that kind of focus.
I'm going to use one thing, and people might read this differently. By the way, I will get to the outcomes of the meeting just in a second. But the one thing I would say, JP, is there's a Lennoxtown Unfiltered kind of thing that they do on the Celtic TV channel, where it's more or less just from afar, someone filming training and then getting all the wee clips and pulling them together, no interviews or anything like that. But there's a moment when Balikwisha and Iniacho and Brendan Rodgers all kind of come together, and it's all smiles and it's high fives and all this kind of stuff. That's energy, right? And that's the energy that you get, and you're going to get it from the gaffer when he's got his players in the door and on the training pitch and able to. And by the way, Balikwisha, you had to get him in earlier anyway. We don't want him in 2 days before you register him. Get him in before that. Get him bedded into the team. Let him get his couple of games out the road so that he starts to know his teammates, the style, the tempo. And then by the time we face Kairat Almaty, if you've got Balikwisha and a couple of others in the door, it is a different proposition. Energy is everything. You know, the dynamic of that team. And you've got 1 or 2 other guys who I want to talk about today who might be in conversations every day with their agent. You know, they might be over in Kazakhstan getting messages from their agent, JP, about their future. And then, you know, the moment happens, and yeah, it was a bobbly surface, but the Dyson Maeda, when he was in his pomp last season, is putting things away like that without thinking. You know, have a think back to even the first minute goal against Rangers where the ball ricochets and you know, no thinking, boom. What about the goal in the cup final, the cup final against Rangers with the 3 touches? Unbelievable. He's not even thinking about it. You know, it's like me not thinking about my words. When you were talking there about, before I get on to the outcome, you were talking there about the statement, and it was, I just had this image, right? And we're from the same era. Dig, 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 and they keep digging. They keep digging. It's like, remember the game Lemmings, where you could dig down, right, into a pot of lava? That was that statement. And it should have had a tune, a Lemmings tune on the back, because they were classic songs as well. Here are the findings from last night. I've got a few people in the comments asking questions, which we'll get to as well. So here we go. The fan consultation from last night. Yesterday evening, a consultation meeting was held with the signatories of the recent open letter to Celtic TV. All signatories were invited, some attended in person, some on a Zoom. The open letter has still to be addressed by Celtic FC, which is a problem, despite it representing tens of thousands of Celtic fans. The consultation meeting reflected the second step of acting as a collective fan movement, as yet unnamed, for positive change at our club, and was attended by 85 in the room, maybe even more than that, and 175 online. Comprehensive minutes will soon be shared with all signatories. At the meeting, there was an overwhelming consensus on the following points, which were compounded by a fan survey of circa 40,000 Celtic fans in attendance of the meeting. One wee point before I get on to the outcomes here, JP, is people, I mean, I have recently shared the rally at Shettleston Halls, and it's just phenomenal to watch, and it's a moment in time, and it's a part of history. And people have said, why didn't we do that? I think at the moment, with the climate that we're in, people could weaponize certain things in a certain way. Just to go back to what you said there about galvanated, actually, I'm going at this coming full circle here. People can weaponize just about anything to fit that with a narrative that they have. There's a guy who shouldn't represent our club. He's thick, he's uneducated, he doesn't even know that's not a word. And you can weaponize just about anything. So it wasn't filmed. We did record the audio insofar as it would allow us to have a comprehensive set of minutes afterwards, which will be shared, but nothing was filmed. And we didn't want, because it's one of the ones as well, JP, we were taking details at the door, etc., etc. We're not asking for ID. A lot of people who have got platforms or Twitter handles, etc., we don't know what they look like. Someone might have come in who wasn't invited, who wasn't a signatory. And an example of that was just this morning when I was looking through the daily Celtic news on Celtic News Now. The Herald ran a story about one of the outcomes, which I'm about to share. How were they able to run it? Who knows? So here we go. To build on the recent no confidence votes of the Celtic FC board, seeking the removal of Michael Nicholson, CEO, Chris Mackay, CFO, and Peter Lawwell, chairman. There's the first one. I think we'll go through these individually. To build a strategic escalatory campaign against the Celtic board, starting this Sunday in earnest and building it up depending on how that materialises. To build a democratic and representative fan body. And I think that that's really important as well. And that has already begun. To coordinate a late entry protest at Kilmarnock versus Celtic to further visualise and vocalise fan discontent. I'll get back to some of the comments who don't think that's a good idea in just a second, because it's all about agreeing, disagreeing, discourse, and obviously discussion. To help progress these points and the fan movement generally, a steering group of volunteers is being assembled. Finally, we would like to thank all who have participated in the process so far. It's natural that there will be a mix of feeling, and we'll get onto that, regarding some actions or inaction. However, the most important consideration at this stage is maintaining, building, and utilising broad fan support. Now, if you were to look at the outcome of the survey, which is up on the screen now, overwhelming, really, isn't it? It's overwhelming. I'm going to get rid of that ticker tape in case that's hiding anything. There we go. So if you're looking at that, there was potential objectives that we were trying to take from last night's meeting, and then the actions thereafter. So you're looking at endorsing a vote of no confidence. Bear in mind the amount of people who voted here. And can I just say, the amount of people who actually submitted a form on the survey is said to be more than was submitted for the official Celtic survey. Yet, The guys and girls who were dealing with this, JP, were able to turn this round in 48 hours, and we're still waiting on the outcome of the Celtic survey. So there you go. 99.4% endorsed the vote of no confidence. It's huge. It's massive. Talking about a call for the removal of Michael Nicholson, Chris Mackay, Peter Lawwell. Look at the percentages next to their names. Overwhelming. Endorse a call to implement a fan advisory board. Yes. Would you endorse the idea of a democratic Celtic fan body? Yes. Now, what I would point out as well in relation to objectives, I think objectives can be voted on equally, JP, by fans all over the world, regardless of whether you are a game-going fan, a season ticket holder, a shareholder, somebody who goes to away games, somebody who never misses a European game. Everybody, I think, the first section of that is, their answer is weighted the same. One of the conversations last night is following on from that. Those same people, many of whom might not be able to get to games because of their geography, finances, any other reason, or they're on a waiting list to get a season ticket, may have answered the following. So the point last night was when we're talking about boycotting games, you could say, yes, I endorse the boycotting of games, but you don't go to the games. Mm-hmm. So, what they did on the back of that, JP, in advance, is they went to 10 individual randomly selected supporters' buses, and they asked people on the buses, would you do? And the result was completely different. The result wasn't overwhelmingly up for boycotting. Okay, so that shows you some of the challenges that we have, and also the survey and how the survey can be evaluated as well. So we'll go through each of these points individually that came out of that. And I think the big one, of course, is the late entry protest at Kilmarnock v Celtic. I know that you go to a lot of away. In fact, you go to every away game you can. JP, I don't know if you've got a ticket for this Sunday.
Not currently, no, but I would obviously, if one was to come into my possession between now and Sunday, I would completely and utterly do that. I would not go in. I would join whatever fans are outside the stadium and go in. Of course, it would obviously depend on whether Kilmarnock would actually let you in after, well, if it's 5 minutes or however long it is. Hopefully they would actually not be as snide as to be like, oh no, you weren't here for the start of the game. I mean, that's another potential roadblock, I suppose, if Kilmarnock were not to play ball, but I highly doubt that will be the case.
When this was being discussed last night, all the more kind of intrinsic nature of how to actually do this, logistics of it, which will be released later on, that was being discussed. And one of the things that was said is that there is a concourse once you get into Rugby Park. That's where everybody's going to be,
of course, based
in there. So what's going to happen is the fan groups will have some form of protest banner, which will be on the seats. And what then happens is, because I'm going to bring in a couple of, because it's all about discussion here. Ian Roy says fans arriving 10 minutes late at Rugby Park helps no one but the home team. And another one that's come in is saying, I don't think coming in 10 minutes late would help the team. Right. That was raised last night. So great points. They were raised last night. So the thought process is this, right? It's about amplification. So going back, and it doesn't matter about what's happened before, JP, but a lot of people previously didn't like you sleeping with the enemy and speaking to Sky Sports and speaking to all the different broadcasters. But what it does do, and what we will continue to do, is amplify the message. Because with regards to, you and I discussing this on Acsom, and some of the viewing figures we've had over the last week have been unbelievable, some of the largest we've ever had across all the different platforms. The club still ignores it. Let's be honest. They still ignore it. They still turn up the PA and shut the curtains, However, if there's a game live on Sky Television and the co-commentator of that game or someone in the studio in that game will invariably be Chris Sutton, who's already spoken up against the board. That is a visual protest that will be seen across the globe. And that's something that was discussed last night. It's about the impact of that, the empty seats, JP. Broadcasters don't want to see empty seats. They don't want to see that. There's the empty seats, and there's a message on those seats. And Sutty is so well versed in what is going on when he's here to the ground. He will explain why that's happened, and he will explain that they're standing under the stand for 10 minutes. That's what they're doing. They're protesting against this board. He will know. He will be well versed that this is part of the fan movement, and it's a strategic move, and it's the beginning. As it said in the outcomes from last night, this will escalate. This is the beginning.
It's a long war, isn't it? It's a long more. It's not something that's everything I've read and listened to over the last week or two has suggested that this isn't going to just happen overnight. But what has happened quicker than probably anyone really expected was the mobilisation. And the mobilisation's come about because of things like this.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, things like this, and social media, of course, as well. But you've had to take a lot of stick from people in the past when you've gone on to Sky or whatever platforms invited you on. But when you go on and you're talking sense and talking the same language as everybody else is coming away with, and you're actually given a platform to put that out to hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions, and you do it well, then I don't think anybody really who has Celtic at heart could sort of stand back and go, ring their fist at you and be like, oh, who's that guy? But it's like, well, yeah, that guy's actually speaking sense. And if I didn't know you, I would be watching and listening to you being like, thank God there's somebody actually explaining it to the people that don't maybe know, like explaining it to Kelly Cates or whoever else you've spoken to over the last week or two, because to try and put it into like a soundbite of 2 or 3 minutes is quite difficult. Mm-hmm. Because it's like coming on here on a Thursday, you want to try and say something and you've maybe got ideas in your head about what you want to say, but then all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's a microphone and I know that there's people watching, and you could let that get to you. And sometimes it has got to me. Sometimes I've fluffed my lines and said the wrong thing or not said what I wanted to say, and then the broadcast ends and you're like, oh God, I should have said that. Mm-hmm. But when you've got that camera on you and Sky, you've got to deliver, and that also helps galvanize the people to actually think, right, well, if something's happening, if there's a survey, I'm going to fill it in. If there's this, I'm going to do this. If there's this, I'm going to do that. And there's so many comments, and you read, being a season ticket holder, 45, 50 years, never been as disenfranchised as this in my life. Mm-hmm. And, you've got my vote and you've got my support. And, I remember bumped into a guy. I've tried to phone you the other day, and I know you've been busy, but I bumped into a guy, Joe Woods, in Argyle Street. He just stopped me and he was like, JP. And he was with his wife, and he's been at a load of events at Bad. Your better half sold him a half price tracky top because it was raining and freezing outside, and he only had a shirt on or a t-shirt or something like that. So really, really nice guy. Met his wife at a gig in Dunfermline, Nazareth gig, like 50 odd years ago. Yeah, they've been married 53 years.
That's incredible. That
Nazareth, supported by the Tremolos. There you go. Sorry to bring music into it.
That was seamless. That was seamless. If you're from this part of the world, Nazareth are big news, as are obviously Skids, big country. But there used to be a really decent wee boozer in Dunfermline where the tour posters and all that were on the wall. And I'm pretty sure Nazareth supported like the Rolling Stones back in the day. Sure,
quite possibly. I think I tried to find the gig. I think it might have been at the Kinema Ballroom.
Yeah,
which would sound about right given the time period. But anyway, he just said that we had a quick chat in the street, and he was just sort of saying how good it was that Acsom is one of the many platforms that allows Celtic fans to engage and sort of agree, disagree. But the one thing that everybody's agreeing on is that this isn't good enough, and it's absolutely not the direction that we should be heading in. And that's now become more and more apparent with all the things. And with regards to the Sunday protest and the impact that would have, because it's on Sky. I mean, I spoke to you a week or two ago about me being at that Roma Milan game. That was just a random thing. Went to see my mate who was working in Rome, and there was a game on, and we obviously wanted to go because never been to that stadium before. And it was Roma Milan, and then they did this staged turning their back on this was a staged walkout in I think it was the second half, and they turned their back on the game for 5 minutes, and then very, very slowly walked out, and that was basically the kind of the ultras. And I think maybe at one point as well, they actually had like newspapers, and they brought out newspapers and held the newspapers up. I think that was maybe the first thing they did before they did the walkout. They also had a huge tifo or huge tifos of a Roma fan that had died the corresponding fixture against Milan 20 or 30 years previous, and they had a banner, and I think the banner maybe said something like "not in his name," like as if to say he was like a hardcore Roma fan, and what is going on at the club right now is not in his name. It's not. This isn't what he supported or whatever. And I found all this out afterwards. Now, I'm pretty sure that would have been reported on Italian news, been in the Gazzetta dello Sport the next day. I didn't buy it, but I don't speak fluent Italian, but I would imagine that would have been reported in some way. It wouldn't have just gone unnoticed. And it wasn't against Ranieri, who was the manager at the time. It was against the upper echelons of Roma. And I don't know, never dug deep to find out what happened as a result of that, and if there's still the ongoing strife between the fans and the board or whatever. But these things, they do have an impact. And yes, I get that there'll be people that will say, oh, well, it's going to only affect the team and everything else. But I'd like to think that when the fans do come into the stand, that they might be charged and more vocal than ever.
Exactly. And that was pointed out as well. There's a few comments. People will have their own opinions, and that's fine. And I'm going to bring the first one up, JP, which I think is very important, coming in from Tobias Juganis. Brilliant picture of the maestro there. That was a 2-1 game, wasn't it, at Ibrox? It's a personal decision, and if anyone wants to go, they shouldn't be targeted. That was raised last night. We spoke about, there was people in the room saying, I'm not comfortable with that, and I'm going to go. And I'm going to go and get my seat. I'm going to sit down. And what was mentioned last night, all the fan groups are there. They're all there last night, right? Is you will not be treated any differently. If it's not like you're crossing the picket line, go and take your seat if that's what you want to do. But there will be enough people in the concourse area, JP, who, A, you'll see the empty seats, but B, once they go in, it'll be more vociferous than ever. And someone also said you can't win a game in the first 10 minutes, but you can. You can't lose a game in the first 10 minutes. You can lose a game in the last 10 minutes. So that they're going in the first 10 minutes, and they're going to give the players and Brendan Rodgers that bounce that you're talking about, actually coming in, and the energy. Can you imagine? And even that has an impact, JP. It's silent, and there's hardly anything happening. You can hear somebody shouting in the sideline. All of a sudden, the Celtic fans are up 10 minutes in.
Well, somebody, I can't remember who it was, but somebody kind of spoke about the vibe in the away end at Ibrox a couple of weeks ago, and just sort of said that it was my mate Scott McCorry from the Homeboys podcast, because I met him.
Represented last night?
Was he there, aye?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I was working last night, by the way, otherwise I would have been there. I was working a gig. But he said that there was like a really weird vibe about the away end in Ibrox. It wasn't what it normally was. So maybe you need something like this to sort of kickstart everybody and wind everybody up to the point that when they do go in, they're going in ready for battle, ready for the long war, because it's going to start on Sunday, and then it'll go from there. And it's interesting listening to Jim Orr talking about it. I mean, I know people have said this already, but when you're actually speaking to somebody who's gone through this for different reasons, but has gone through this, and you think to yourself, he faced dissent and sort of maybe a bit of scoffing at, like, oh, you and your leaflet or whatever, because that was what you had to do, like leaflets. That was it. There was no way of getting to everybody via one of these or an email or something like that. It was really, really difficult back then, and it just shows the development in modern technology has allowed us to use this moment. And you think to yourself, what would have happened if we'd had all this back then? We might not have had, a 1989 copy of Not the View saying, is there anybody out there, basically? And then it taken 5 years.
Right.
I really hope that we're not sort of waiting 5 years for this to change, because as I can't think, Alan Morrison said that, and it kind of put the wind up me a bit, because he was like, this could affect the team, because obviously if we're anti the board, are they going to continue to spend money on the team if in the wake of in the face of almost all out assault from the Celtic fans against them? They could turn around and exactly the same way with their derisory statement on Saturday, exactly the same way they could turn around and be like, oh well, we'll just promote youth or
on
something.
that point, JP, and this came from the meeting, and by the time I got home, people had been sharing different things on WhatsApp groups. We're in that world where everything's instant and it's out there, and whoever was in there sharing it, etc., and whatever else. So I'm not speaking out of school here, but the Association of Irish Celtic Supporters Club were represented last night, as was the association and the affiliation. And that's fantastic that they were there. And Jerry spoke really, really passionately last night about the meeting with Michael Nicholson, right? Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, you've seen the minutes, etc., right? But you don't know the vibe in the room, do you? Mm-hmm. You don't know the nature or the tone. Mm-hmm. And so that was discussed last night. And we keep talking about something very, very simple. And actually, we have been discussing it, not because we're Nostradamus, because it was clear to see since day one of our Celtic State of Mind. We don't know what the club's vision is. We actually do not know what they want to achieve in the next 5 years. We don't know, right? Because they never told us. And that was raised by Jerry at the meeting with Michael Nicholson. And Michael's response was, "Oh, I do have that pinned up on the wall of my office. And there's a little note underneath it which says, must communicate with Celtic fans." And I've highlighted that with a wee highlighter. There you go. I can imagine I'm going up there with a wee, I must communicate that. Yeah, I'm going to highlight that just to remind me to do it. How long have you been in the job, Michael? You have never communicated that with the Celtic fan base. But it was almost as if, JP, these things are so important. The priority matters, that they are absolutely not seeing the priority of. We've all been in jobs where you're late with something and it's burning a hole in your head, right? And you go to bed at night, it's the last thing you think about, work-wise, and you wake up in the morning, it's the first thing you think about, I need to get that done. I need to get that done. Just sat on it. It's sticking up there on his office wall, and it needs to be shared with the fans, and it never has been. And he says that was the kind of level. It wasn't a wee comfy wee meeting with tea and biscuits and everybody's on the same page. He said it was not like that whatsoever. Keep the comments coming in. We're going to go through each individual initial action, and we want to hear your thoughts on it. The first thing I'm going to bring up, Alex Burns. There we go. Rebels Reborn. We were always there. I think it was just about coming together. And we've got Hoot. Our fans in politics should come to the front. We need our Celtic professionals now more than ever. Isn't Brian Wilson got a huge amount of experience in politics? And I would expect him to have been a phenomenal public speaker, for example, JP, in his world of politics. How often has he come out and spoken about anything at the football club?
I nominate Bernard Ponsonby.
Bernard Ponsonby, for me, would be a phenomenal figurehead for any kind of fan movement. I remember it might have been yourself. Did he actually go to the Heriot What at some point?
It was we did the Tommy Burns supper. Heriot What did the Tommy Burns supper in conjunction with Celtic at the Kerrydale Suite, and it was Brendan Rodgers was there, so it would have been in some time between 2016 and 2018. I can't remember which year it was, but Bernard Ponsonby spoke at that, and it was the first time I'd ever heard him speak, and there was absolute pin drop silence. And he was talking about Tommy Burns, and it was just incredible. Like, he's such a great speaker. I mean, you've had him on.
He's an amazing orator. I mean,
yeah, I don't know how anybody could have an issue with him. Do you know what I mean? I just don't know how anybody could write negative comments about him, or it doesn't really compute with me that could happen. So
I think that's a phenomenal suggestion. This is why I think discussion is so important here, JP, because he's been on the show, yet that has not even occurred to me. If you're talking about figureheads or someone who is actually right, okay, the group, there's been a request, let's say, within the group from X, Y, or Z broadcaster. They want to speak to you about an update. Who do you put front and centre? Imagine putting him front and centre. It would be like, now they mean business. And we've had him on the show. I mean, he's been on Acsom, and it was a tremendous appearance, a great discussion with him. Great speaker. I used to see him all the time at the games. More stand-upper. Used to see him all the time. Say to my dad, that's that guy for the telly, Bernard Ponsonby. Oh, aye. All the good guys are Celtic fans, son. And then, of course, You told me about his appearance at that, and then I think Colin Watt mentioned that he had seen him maybe in Greenock doing something there. You must get him on your show. And it took ages to get him on. And I think after he retired from the broadcasting, he came on and he was phenomenal. I think it's a great shout, that. Des, it's only a CSC movement at the moment, unaffiliated, haven't been consulted. The club will prey on this gap. Well, everybody's been consulted in the survey, everybody. But in terms of those on the open letter, many of the names are CSCs, absolutely, or affiliations or associations who look after CSCs. No doubt about that, absolutely does. But there are also other groups, and there's a lot of fan media platforms on there now as well. The Ultra groups are on there, the Celtic Trust. There is a lot of other organisations who represent Celtic supporters or groups, and they're on there as well. But yes, that is a discussion, Des, in relation to anyone who is not yet affiliated. The Maestro, back the team, change the board. I think that is the message as well. The Kilmarnock, late walk-in isn't about trying to hamper the team, JP. In many, many ways, it's about giving them a lift when the fans do go in 10 minutes into the game. But at the same time, it's going to be amplified because it's a live game. Chris Sutton will be involved in some way, shape or form, and he'll know what's happening and why the fans are doing it.
And the Sky cameras will turn on the stand that the Celtic fans are in. I assume we've only got one, as opposed to when we used to get the two at Kilmarnock. But the cameras will go to that moment, and that will be a broadcast moment, which Chris Sutton, like you said, will speak about, and it will be reported. Like you said, it's a continuing amplification of the message, which is we're not standing for this anymore. I'm not putting money into. I don't feel the need to put money into this anymore because I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere near value for the money that I'm putting in. And this whole to say we appreciate the importance of timing, like really,
I know,
absolutely absurd. Like that is basically slapping us about the face. Like
I'm going to pick up on that, JP, the timing thing, because I honestly, to have the brass neck to come away with this, I'm going to show you something right now. I'm going to bring it up on the screen, right, before we get to the rest of the points, talking about the timing point, because that jumped out at me, right? So, by the way, Celtic have launched a new merchandise line today. I don't know if you're aware.
I know you mentioned that yesterday. They actually still have done it.
They have done it, but they're a bit shy in sharing things at the moment, as you can see, right? So this was on the 9th of September, and it was an exclusive interview with one of our new signings, which is great. There's everybody signing. So there's the statement there, right? Statement, 6th of September. Since then, basically, it's a generic share of some content that's dropped onto your channel, and again, and then the package. Now, the issue I've got here, I'm like, okay, what else was posted that day? That's just a pinned thing, so that doesn't count. So what else has been posted on the day of Jockstein's 40th anniversary of his passing yesterday? Nothing on Twitter. So you've got the UEFA Europa League 4-match package there, right? And everybody will know the price of that because you'll have your emails and all the rest of it if you're a season ticket holder, of course. And it's out there, and it's out there on the socials, right? If you can put that out, that communication, surely you can put out a tweet, JP, about the greatest man that ever managed our football club, the man that won us the European Cup. It was his 40th anniversary yesterday.
When you're wishing happy birthdays to ex-Celtic players every time there is a birthday, and no disrespect to those players, they obviously wore the shirt and played for us, but how on earth you can't acknowledge that when so many other pages were acknowledging that?
Albion Rovers acknowledged it.
Yeah.
And by the way, right, the excuse might be, we're getting too much heat on Twitter. Who is? Because whoever's got access to that Twitter account, that X account, JP, nobody knows who it is. So they're not getting heat.
Yeah.
Put that out. Be respectful. You don't have to go in and read the comments if you don't want to. You're obviously not looking to engage with us anyway. But don't go through a day. They posted it on Instagram, Jockstein.
Oh, did they?
But they didn't post it on it. It's like they've just given up on X. But you'll try and sell us Europa League. It's tone deaf. The whole company at the moment, there's something wrong, there's something broken, and that lack of communication is it's amateur. It's absolutely.
Did you notice the amount of, or the lack of amount of likes on the statement?
I know.
Now, like, I think that's it was less than 1,000, if I saw it correctly there. Less than 1,000.
875, yeah.
Aye, so that's not a very good metric given the amount of followers they have.
Well, it's seen by 4.5 million fans. 4.5 million people have seen that, right? 875 people, rather. Probably the directors and all their friends and family have liked it. 4.5 million versus 875 likes. But at what point? I mean, we've spoken about it. At what point do you as a group of people, as a board of directors, take some responsibility, show some contrition? Right? I said last week, you guys are not capable of dealing with this. Bring in a PR company, an outside agency to come in and sort it out for you. And the first thing they would say to them, JP, communicate with the people that you've annoyed. Because if you don't do that, what happens is that fan base that you're not communicating with have now come together. We've now had a meeting. We're now talking about actions because you're not communicating with us, right? At no point have you said that's not good enough. At no point have you answered any of the 7 questions in the open letter. We focused quite a bit there on the Kilmarnock game this Sunday. It had to be immediate. It had to be in the here and now. Keep this momentum going. To build a democratic and representative fan body. Now, in relation to that, other clubs have got that, JP. Celtic don't. And it's something that's been discussed for a long, long time. And I know it was discussed in meetings with the Celtic Trust over a number of years. It's never actually happened. Whereby if you have a fan body that can, I seen a tweet last week, I don't mind saying it. Rangers do it. Rangers have got that set up where they are then communicating and liaising with the board. At the moment, we do not have a voice.
They could have done with that about 13 years ago, though, couldn't they?
They could have done, yeah. And for all those Rangers fans who are criticising what we do, right? They didn't do what we're doing. They were not galvanised. They were not, mobilised.
That has definitely crossed my mind that this is a case of, and you've said it many times. It's not. This isn't based on the last month. Say it's not. It's no way based on the last month. They've got away with things. They got away with the Ange Postecoglou hiring when the Eddie Howe thing went south, literally. And they got away with getting Ange Postecoglou. That was basically winning a watch. Was Ange Postecoglou? I mean, what on earth? That's the grave concern I have about Brendan Rodgers leaving at the end of the season, because they still have to put a manager in place, and I have absolutely no faith in them to get the best manager that's available.
And I think that feeds into that top point there, JP. We need, well, listen, right, this is something we've already discussed. Dermot Desmond shouldn't be appointing managers anyway. He's in no position to appoint a football manager at this club. He shouldn't be doing that, right? So we know that he appears to be right now what I'm calling the immovable object right now. So you're looking at that and you go, yeah, that's more of a long-term. That's more of a long-term target, if you like, to be able to, in any way, shape or form, influence his influence at the football club. But in the meantime, there are people who are making decisions on a day-to-day basis. To build on the recent no-confidence votes on the Celtic FC board, we're now seeking the removal of Michael Nicholson as CEO of Celtic, Chris Mackay as Chief Financial Officer, and Peter Lawwell as the Chairman. Now, some of the concerns last night were, Dermot Desmond will just put another 3 guys in that are part of his inner sanctum, part of his clique, right? And I'm thinking, yeah, you're right, because, I mean, how are we going to have a say in that? They will do that. But the pertinent point that was raised on that note was, if someone has been removed as a result of what we have done due to their incompetence, you can't simply put someone in with the same remit. You need to put someone into the position with a different remit, JP, to avoid this happening again. I thought it was a great point.
Yeah, no, it is. And going back to the whole, what is the strategy? How many times do you hear people referring to football clubs around Europe with, it's a really interesting project that they've got going on there? They always call it a project. What is our project? What is our project? Because reading that statement, you would have believed that our target is to compete in the Champions League, or certainly going by previous sort of word. Trying to say, I think the word. Previous stuff said by Michael Nicholson in the past, where he said we aim to be a Champions League club, blah blah blah, and it doesn't just stop at that. Like and we haven't achieved that by failing to beat a team from Kazakhstan because we weren't prepared as we should have been, as everybody knew we should have been. Mm-hmm. So you're then asking yourself, what is the project? What is our modus operandi, and why isn't communicated? And what is communicated to players when they sign? Oh, just, we'll get you into the Champions League, you can play well there, and then you'll get a move. And incidentally, on that note, one of the things that Simon Jordan was saying, Martin Keown was going, I think maybe it was the case that some players were, waiting to see which competition Celtic were in before they signed and to get better players. And then Simon Jordan was like, better players aren't going to go to Celtic. Why are they going to go to Scotland? And you're just like, well, no, but we're not aiming to get players at the 15 to 20 million level. We're aiming to get players at the 5 to 10 to then have them play in the Champions League, to increase their value, and then to put eyes on them in the Champions League. For example, I was thinking about it with the Jota signing. It could be something as basic as that Saudi club. We're watching the Champions League and looking for players. Saw Jota score a free kick against Real Madrid and went, oh, we'll have him.
Why did Como sign Kuhn? Was it because he had a good game against Falkirk?
Exactly. So to say that there isn't a pathway at Celtic to play in the Champions League and then to get a move, Matt O'Reilly, Nicholas Kuhn, Liel Abada, there's so many others you can go through. Giacomakis even. I don't know if he played in the Champions League. He did. He scored in the Champions League.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
So that to me was absurd. But however, there isn't like an overall, an overarching vision that has ever been presented, because we don't hear anything from the club, and that is as much as, I think that's as frustrated people as much as anything else, as much as the inadequacies that we have as an operating football club. The lack of communication, like you say, and all those people that we're asking to be replaced are the people that should be communicating with the club, with the fans. Sorry. So it's not unreasonable to be saying, look, you aren't doing your job good enough. We expect better. Move aside. And move aside while your legacy is... the legacy is kind of in tatters at the moment anyway, because if you base it just on this season, they've made an absolute gamble on beating that team without strengthening. And then we've gone out. And they've presided over one of the worst European results ever in our history.
Aye. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt in that, JP. But that is one of the worst European results in Celtic's history. What comes close? Hammerings will be in that list. When you're going and you're shipping 7 goals and all that, they'll be in that list.
Sort of legislate for the hammerings when like teams like Barcelona or PSG or whatever. I mean, look at the amount of money PSG have spent on their squad. And they didn't even manage to win anything with all those superstars that they had. It's taken them to actually be a bit more savvy with their recruitment to put together a team that then goes and wins the Champions League. Yeah. But like what they could do on a one-off game to any team with those, well, they might have not been able to put it consistently together. They had the ability at that time with Neymar, Cavani, Messi. They had the ability to destroy any team on any given night. If you get 2 goals ahead and the heads go down a bit, then they had the ability to just pick us off at will. But that they can explain them away a little bit better. They're never acceptable, they're never enjoyable or palatable, but there's a chasm between those results and what happened in Kazakhstan.
So these are the only ones that are coming to my mind. There may be others, so please share them in the comment section. But I'm thinking Neuchâtel Xamax and Artmedia Bratislava being 2 of the worst displays and results in Celtic's European history. Kairat's worse. Even though they didn't put 5 goals past us, Kairat's worse because the level of opposition, JP, over 210 minutes and failing to score against that team. I think it's actually, and when you look at this, the team that played Xamax, it was Liam Brady's first season. That was a team in transition. The team that played Artmedia Bratislava was the first game Strachan had ever managed for Celtic when we went over there and they pumped us.
Lincoln Red Imps.
Lincoln Red Imps is up there as a singular result, without a doubt. And I do think that's probably a worse. Had they put us out, that's up there, absolutely. But over the two legs, I honestly think that Kairat is the worst. Please let me know if you disagree.
I hadn't seen the post-match interview. I mean, I'm not that kind of person that likes to make myself feel even worse. I'd seen and heard enough of that game, the 90 minutes that I saw. I've never seen the extra time, and I've never seen the penalties, and I certainly hadn't watched the post-match. But it popped up when I was, when YouTube just flings something at you after you've watched something, and suddenly I was watching the post-match press conference with Brendan Rodgers after that game, and he said the thing that he said, which I think I'd read, but it's different when you hear someone say it and you see their face. And he said, the last thing you want to do is manufacture your own stress. Like, if ever there was a kind of absolute open criticism of, and a rightful criticism, it's not as if like, I still can't bear all these people that are saying, oh, it's 100% on Rodgers. Like, Kev's steadfast in that, and there's other people as well. He's not on his own. But I'm sorry, but we did manufacture our own stress as a football club going into those games. There's absolutely no way you can disagree with that. It's there for everyone to see. We had areas we needed to strengthen. There was players that had agreed to move on. We hadn't moved them on. I mean, the Dyson Maeda thing, we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, I can see this being the window where we lose Dyson Maeda. If you go by the club's plan and, maximising, but then to not do it, and for us to miss out on 20-odd million for Maeda and not have someone to come in to replace him, that's terrible management at the top end.
It is. And the other thing as well is Brendan Rodgers mentioned both Dyson Maeda and Rio Atati, in an interview before it got really late in the window. So that conversation's been had, JP, with regards to the cycle of each individual player. And when it comes to that point where it's time for them to move on, we as a football club need to be in a position where we're not trying to get their replacement in the same window that they leave. We need to be in a position where you bring in Alistair Johnston when Juranovic is still at the football club. You bring in Giakoumakis whilst Kyogo's there. You bring in Edouard whilst Dembele's there. We need to be in that position. You need to have bought the player at least one window before the one leaves. But, ideally before that. Ideally 2 windows, so that you've got the whole process in place, JP, so that when Maeda leaves, you've already got the guy to step in.
Well, if you listen to Alan Morrison talking about that very thing and the culmination of the progression or lack of progression in terms of the recruitment and how you've let players stay too long. I spoke about this at the start of this. The very first time I think we spoke about this current season, I was like, maybe we're asking these players to go to the well again. And it's not there, Carter Vickers, Maeda, Hatate. Like, these guys have done everything. They've ticked all the boxes. If there has been interest, just sell them, but just have somebody else to come in, do your job properly, rotate this squad. Don't let it get stale. Don't let them age. All these things are all like really, really important in terms of selling on players. Like, once they get to that, they tip over that 26, 27 in the modern game, when people are obsessed with data and everything else. Like, players at 27, 28 aren't going to be providing the same level of all the metrics that are measured in terms of data. They're not going to be providing the same as they did when they were 21, 22, 23. So that means you're not going to get as much money for them. And everyone wants to hang on to players and likes the idea of players staying for as long as they can, doing a Henrik Larsson, staying 7 years. But realistically, those days are gone, and you have to be flexible in the market to understand that is what happens, and that players do want to move on. And it was no real surprise to me to learn, albeit from a Japanese interview that was verified by Liam, that Dyson Maeda did indeed want to progress and try something else and move with his family. He's got a family. He's got kids. My mate Brian goes to. I think they're at the same nursery, and his kids are at the same nursery. So he told me a maybe last year or something, he was like, "Oh, I was at a kid's party with one of your heroes on Sunday," and I was like, "What?" And he like dies in my head, and he's a nice guy, keeps himself very, very polite and all that, and like, but he's got kids. This is a guy who's like planning his life, and we've mucked that up because we're not good at what we're doing at the top level,
and then we don't expect it to affect him.
Exactly.
Just concentrate in the game, son. It's not going to affect your form. That doesn't happen. These guys are no robots. And that the outcome of all these things was the Kairat result. That was the outcome, right? So that's why I don't think you can 100% say it's on Brendan. That was the outcome of all these other issues that led into that. Now, I want to talk a wee bit about Brendan before we move on. First of all, though, let's bring this up, make sure we've covered all the points enough. Here we go. I'm guessing that the banners that will be on the seats will cover that first point there. Build a strategic escalatory campaign against the Celtic Board. So I think that there's a few people coming in saying, what's a 10-minute walk-in going to do? It's not the end result. It's one thing, like the open letter, like last night's meeting. It is one thing. We need to keep the momentum going. And this is going to keep that momentum going. They know, the board, that we are unhappy with them. The sack the board chants were, faced with the PA going up. If you were to look at the actual game where we're singing sack the board, look at the face of Michael Nicholson and how uncomfortable he is. These things do make a massive, massive difference. Building a democratic and representative fan body, I think, is absolutely necessary. We need to have a say in what happens with this football club as well. And with regards to that, the last one's a very good point as well. To help progress all the above points and the fan movement generally, a steering group of volunteers is being assembled. So people who were there in attendance last night representing whatever group, association, CSC that they were representing or channel, were given the opportunity to give their name, put their name forward, JP, to get more involved in how this moves. And again, with regards to giving my view, I can give you my view on anything Celtic related. But what I can also do, JP, I can give you the overriding view of everybody that comments on the show, which might actually be different from mine. So you're representing the people that tune into Acsom. You're representing the Acsom contributors as well when you speak. But I do want to focus a bit on Brendan here, because one thing that was brought to light last night, a conversation I had post-meeting with a good friend of mine, was, haven't we just let Rangers off the hook here, by the way, in the last few weeks? Because all the pressure had been ramped up on their new manager and all that. And all of a sudden, all the focus is on all the backroom issues that we're having at Celtic. And there has to be that constant focus or realignment of the focus onto Brendan Rodgers and the team as well. And when I look at Brendan Rodgers, that I couldn't have blamed him 2 weeks ago if he'd walked out. Couldn't have blamed him. I don't think the reaction would have been as it was first time round, JP, because we've got far more information available to us. We've seen it in real time. For me, unwinding this saga, unwinding. Now, this time round, I think, from what I'm hearing, Brendan Rodgers is going nowhere. He's going absolutely nowhere. He's going to stay, and he's going to stay until he's emptied. And the Celtic hierarchy can't empty him, because that would just absolutely send this whole thing into a tailspin. How does he approach it, though? Because he's now got a group of players, some of whom don't want to be there, some of whom he doesn't want to be there, and some who he didn't sign. So he's now got a group of players, and I'm all about, I hope he gets his edge back, JP. I really hope we get the Brendan Rodgers who is firing on all cylinders. Yeah, we're out of the Champions League. It's not about minimising our own expectations and all that kind of stuff and bringing them down a level. We are where we are right now. We've got 4 tournaments to play in. I mean, it's all about legacy for me now with Brendan Rodgers this season.
Yeah, it is, and it'll be the true test of the man to navigate these pretty stormy waters that we all find ourselves in. And there's been a few comments where people will be like, "Oh, you should thank Dermot Desmond because he brought Martin O'Neill to the club, and you should thank Dermot Desmond because he brought Brendan Rodgers to the club." It's all very well bringing them, but it's about how you look after them when they're actually in the building and make sure. Like, there's so many players. You've spoken to many players about the post-Seville era and how we didn't build in it and how we recruited pretty poorly in the wake of that. And we're doing the same thing again. And we have been doing the same thing again, where you clearly are reducing the quality of the first team squad, taking in the big sales, and then not actually recruiting and scouting properly. So it's about looking after the guy when he's there. So yes, okay, I thank Dermot Desmond for his appointment, whether it's a phone call or asking.
Even though he shouldn't be appointing the manager.
Of course he shouldn't, but he's appointed all the other managers that haven't done well. Like he appointed Ronnie Dyler then, going by that. And I didn't have any real issue with Ronnie Dyler as a person, but clearly he was not the right Celtic manager at that time. You know, it was just a case of like, oh well, he'll get us, he'll win us the league, but you know, we'll not progress and we'll not spend to progress and we'll not qualify for the Champions League. Even though you're looking at that interview with Peter Lawwell 11 years ago, where he's saying every penny will be invested, and you know, we just move on, we keep the head and move on, and you're like, come on, man. Really? You just expect us to do that every single time we get knocked out of the Champions League? But Brendan Rodgers in this situation, it's a tough one for him. But I'm so glad that we've got him in the post. I think that's the one. It almost feels like we've got someone on our side, you know, because he's speaking the same language as us throughout this whole summer. And everybody can see what's happened. It's not as if there's any kind of like, and yes, okay, people will say, oh, you know, that he spoke up for the board and the board bleeds Celtic and everything else. I don't really know or understand why that is, and I don't want him to sort of be like, that's it, I'm away, rip up the NDA, and then just train his guns on the board. Like I don't want that to happen, because then where does that leave us?
See, brilliant point, JP. The first thing I'm going to say there in relation to that interview, because when he gave it, I was fuming, because you could read right through that, you know, the board bleeds Celtic. The same people that prepared and signed off the statement that went out on Saturday briefed Brendan Rodgers before that interview, the same people. And that's the reason why that was so mixed messages when Brendan came out and said that. That's not Brendan. That's the PR guys telling him this is the company's kind of line on this, but we've got to be connected. Everybody's got to be connected. There's the word, connected, Buzz, right? That board bleeds Celtic, right? There's the okay, and then he goes, and then he says it, and the words came out of Brendan's mouth. They weren't prepared by him.
No,
that's a PR machine, and it's the same PR machine that thought it was okay, right, to go behind the gaffer's back and put a hit piece. I don't know who gave permission for the hit piece, but it's the same club. It's the same club that's done it. You know, we put that hit piece in that rag.
Squirrels were dispatched.
Squirrels were dispatched, yes. And then the statement comes out. But that's the first part of a trilogy, or a horror trilogy. And it was sending Brendan out with all that nonsense about they're all connected and bleed Celtic. Right, say this and say that. And he's went and done it, you know. And I can understand why, because he is the only person that's speaking to the press, and he has got people who employ him telling him, like, this is the line, this is the company line. You've got to toe it. You know, we need to keep all this in-house. This is all starting to fracture here. Give them nothing, you know. And he's done it. But by the end of the window, he's not feeling like that, is he?
But he's also said in the same window, he's also given us enough to say, if you want a manager that will just maintain, then I'm not your guy. I want to progress. I want to push Celtic as far as they can go. And it's not by being reckless with money. It's not by putting us in danger of going into liquidation or anything like that. Far from it. But we have to be far, far better at what we're doing than we have done in the last 10, 15 years. And you've said, and many other people have said, that the lack of competition in Scotland has allowed us to win the level of trophies that we have. And then when you then try and take that team to Europe, we've been exposed on so many occasions, and none more so than in Kazakhstan, where it was a wholly unprepared team for so many reasons to go into that game with player question marks over players' futures, discussions with players going to other clubs whilst they're trying to negotiate that game. Not good enough. Not good enough at all. And it's it's not what I expected us to be talking about in the sort of the advent of a fixture against Kilmarnock away. Normally we'd just be sitting here talking about, well, who's going to play and blah blah blah. I mean, we don't know who's going to play.
An actual debut. We've not spoken about any of that this week. We have not spoken about it.
It's a shame for him, because I did watch some of that interview, and he seems like a nice guy, and seems like he's keen to work with Brendan again, and who knows, he might surprise us all. But he'll surprise us all despite the board, because that was never meant to be who we were signing. We all know that Dolberg was the guy that they were after. We all know that they made a mess of that. I heard some things last night that would suggest that it wasn't all about Ajax coming in. A player isn't blind to what's going on at a football club from a distance, put it that way. So
yeah, well, there you go. There's the impact as well of a club who is conducting themselves in a certain way, and whether or not a player wants to enter that environment. And especially when he's got options, JP, which most players do have, that we're going for. We've got a situation at the moment where Brendan Rodgers has previously said that he didn't sign Yamada or Inamura. They were club signings. We've got a situation where we don't quite know what's happening with Simpson Pusey. He's never kicked the ball yet. Brendan Rodgers did say that he would appear after the international break. Maybe it was the plan all along. I hope that is the case, and I hope he is going to be involved, but he's not in the European squad for the Europa League. And we've got a scenario where Yang thought he was out the door. Maeda has been speaking with his agent and potentially even clubs about leaving Celtic, and potentially Rio Hatate. Conversation for another day, because he was spoken about in the same breath as Maeda when Rodgers spoke about it a month or two ago. Now, you put a clip of Peter Lawwell talking 11 years ago, and it could have been last week if he had the gumption to actually speak to anybody. Yesterday, or this morning rather, I put out an interview with Brendan Rodgers following our exit from the Champions League against Bayern Munich last season. Here's the quote that stuck out for me. My unswerving plan is to make this a seasoned club at this level, where we can go and really hurt big opponents like Bayern Munich. That quote came from a press conference 7 months ago. 7 months ago, and look at what we're talking about now. The board didn't listen, the board didn't act, and see, in a week and a half, the Celtic fans have come together. For anyone who doesn't think that it's an impactful enough action on Sunday, just consider in 1.5 weeks we have brought together almost 500 groups, be that associations, affiliations, CSCs, individual CSCs, fan groups, the Celtic Trust. We've also got fan media, bloggers that all come together. We've managed to then have a meeting with agreed outcomes. We're putting a steering group together, and there's an action on Sunday. That's 1.5 weeks. And you've just got to look at the momentum there, JP. This is going to escalate when necessary, and hopefully we can get the action that we need. Before I jump into my new favourite Celtic podcast, this T-shirt appears on the mannequin behind me, and you shared something with a guy on Twitter who has actually blocked me and blocked Acsom because he's a raging Rangers fan, and he's got an issue with me having this mannequin behind me here, right? And for some strange reason, most Rangers fans who have an issue with this mannequin here find some kind of sexual innuendo in it, JP, and they think this is my bedroom, which it is, of course, and I've said it before, my Celtic duvet set is on my bed just over there. Absolutely, that's how sad I am, and my old man's just making my lunch for me. Absolutely, right? So, they've got an issue with this mannequin. But one of the biggest issues which I found funny was Celtic didn't win the World Cup in 1967. They've even put it through Grok, right, to try and say, oh, this guy's created a T-shirt for an event that did not exist. There's a ticket to the World Club Championship between... And by the way, I know that you have never been in a position to play such a game, but this is a racing club of Argentina versus Celtic. And this is one of the ticket stubs of the 3 games we played against them. Look it up. There's a great scene of the Daily Departed, John Clark, getting his dukes up to fight. The game ended in farce, but we did play what was described as the final of the World Cup, although it was a club competition in 1967, quite new in terms of clubs competing in such a tournament, JP. But that graphic is now on that T-shirt, on that mannequin. which is only there because, I could do that with a coat hanger, JP. It doesn't matter either way. There you go. It's a mannequin, right? I use them at live events and it sits in here whilst we don't have a live event. All right. So that's what it is. Just wanted to clarify that. The other thing, check out, ladies and gents, this was me last night getting in from being at Barra's Art and Design at 12 o'clock yesterday, recorded the bulletin. Sorry about the echo. I know there's a wee bit of echo in there. That's not going to happen when we're using it as a studio. Then I recorded an interview with David Lowe. Very, very interesting. Hopefully it will be on the channel tonight. Then nipped up, grabbed a coffee with a pal of mine, and then into Gracie's for the meeting. Finally got home at, 11 o'clock or something, right? And I'm just unwinding. You'll be the same after a gig, JP. You're just unwinding, right? And this thing popped up, and it's a Celtic channel. And it's actually called Another One from Paul, right? So search for it. This is what we all need in our life right now as a Celtic fan, JP. This is a guy who is having that self-deprecating humour that we all loved about Not The View back in the day. And not only is he poking fun at Celtic in the current situation, as an absolute Celtic fan, by the way, he's doing the same with fan media. He's watching all the fan media, and he is saying that there's lists every week that he's going to release. And some of the good guys, if you've done something good that week, you're on the good boys list. And if you've not, you're on the naughty list. And all I'm saying, JP, and it's not negative, you get a mention. You get a mention on this week's show. Go and check it out. Channel 67 on the socials, on the YouTube. Another One from Paul. Go and check it out. I was laughing out loud watching it, literally. And I thought to myself, this is what I need right now. I need a wee bit of this. Because see, back in the day on the supporters bus coming home from the games and you're reading a fanzine and the football and all the nonsense that's going on with the board, sometimes you need a wee bit of a release. There it is. Absolutely. Quite unique. Go and check it out.
Well, just on that, and obviously he's referencing all the different podcasts, of which there are many. One of the key things that I've taken out of the fact that people have actually come together, like last night, in Gracie's and online and everything else, is that people have to realise that when we speak, we're not speaking for ourselves or this. Everybody that speaks are speaking about Celtic, and that's it. That's the common thing. It's always the common thing is. I love speaking about Celtic. I speak about it with you on here. I speak about it with my mates. It just so happens that when we couldn't speak in person, this became a platform that allowed us to speak. And I'm glad that you grew it in that time and have continued to grow it since then, that for occasions like this, where we do really need everybody's voices and pull in the same direction, that at least there is one here and then there's another one and there's another one, and everyone's saying the same thing. So that's ultimately what will drive change is everyone singing from the same hymn sheet. Because if you get fragmentation, and there will be a bit of fragmentation, I don't doubt that, but as long as it's not so much that it stops the momentum of whatever this is driving towards.
It's a proper collective, JP. You're right. And back in the day, they didn't. This was commented on last night. Back in the day, they were able to come together without this level of communication that was at their fingertips, and without trying to amplify the message as well. So let's keep it going, and everything that happens we will report on it. We'll be as involved as we are required to be in it, as well as a collective, as a movement. Hopefully there will be a name for that sometime soon, but we have come together. That's what's important. Thanks everybody for getting involved. Agree and disagree, that's what it's all about as well. I mean, a great suggestion earlier on from JP in relation to Bernard Ponsonby. Absolutely. I think I should drop him a wee message on this one. But, this will grow. It will grow. And if you're going on Sunday, let us know your thoughts on the action that is going to be taken as well. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. And don't hesitate to get in touch with us on the socials or via email or on the comment section of this particular video. Give us a thumbs up. And we'll see you again tomorrow at 12:30 on A Celtic State of Mind.